Question 1. When analyzing a behavior, the environmental events that happen immediately before the behavior occurs are called the A. Consequences, B. Responses, C. Antecedents, D. Functions. Answer C. Antecedents. This question is about the fundamental ABC framework used in ABA to understand behavior. The A stands for antecedent, which refers to everything that happens in the environment right before the behavior of interest occurs. This could be an instruction, a sight, a sound, or any other environmental event. Understanding antecedents helps us predict when a behavior is likely to happen. Consequences happen after the behavior, responses are the behaviors themselves, and functions are why the behavior happens. The antecedent is the setting the stage part of the picture. Question 2. Which dimension of behavior refers to the total number of times a behavior occurs? A. Duration. B. Latency. C. Frequency. D. Intensity. Answer C. Frequency. This question asks about one of the basic ways we measure behavior. Frequency is simply a count of how many times a specific behavior happens within a given observation period. It's used for behaviors that have a clear beginning and end, like hitting, hand raises, or saying a word. Duration measures how long a behavior lasts, latency measures the time to start, and intensity measures the force or magnitude. Frequency is just counting how many. Question 3. A child is given praise immediately after they put a toy away. In the future, the child is more likely to put toys away. This is an example of A. Negative reinforcement. B. Positive punishment. C. Positive reinforcement. D. Extinction. Answer C. Positive reinforcement. This scenario demonstrates positive reinforcement. The behavior is putting a toy away. The consequence is receiving praise, which is something being added to the environment, because the praise happened immediately after the behavior and made the behavior more likely in the future. It is reinforcement. Specifically, since something was added to increase the behavior, it's positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement removes something to increase behavior, punishment decreases behavior, and extinction withholds reinforcement. Adding something good to make the behavior happen more is positive reinforcement. Question 4. What is the primary purpose of conducting a preference assessment? A. To teach the client new skills. B. To decrease challenging behaviors. C. To identify stimuli that may function as reinforcers. D. To determine the function of a behavior. Answer C. To identify stimuli that may function as reinforcers. This question is about the goal of preference assessments. A preference assessment is a procedure used to determine what items, activities, or stimuli a client likes or prefers at a given time. The main reason we do this is to find potential reinforcers, things we can use as rewards to motivate the client to learn new skills or engage in desired behaviors. It's not about teaching skills, decreasing problem behaviors directly, or figuring out why a problem behavior happens. That's an FBA. It's simply about discovering what motivates the client. Question 5. When defining a behavior, it is essential that the definition is A. Simple and easy to understand. B. Agreed upon by all team members. C. Based on the client's feelings. D. Observable and measurable. Answer D. Observable and measurable. This question stresses the importance of a good behavior definition in ABA. For a behavior to be useful for assessment and intervention, you must be able to see or hear it happening. Observable, and count or measure it reliably. Measurable. This objective description ensures consistency when collecting data and implementing procedures. While simplicity and team agreement are beneficial, they are not the most essential characteristic. You must be able to objectively detect and quantify the behavior. We don't define behavior based on internal states like feelings because we can't directly observe them. Make sure your definitions describe exactly what you see or hear. Question 6. Which measurement system involves dividing the observation period into equal intervals and recording whether the behavior occurred at any point during each interval? A. Whole interval recording. B. Momentary time sampling. C. Partial interval recording. D. Duration recording. Answer: C. Partial interval recording. This question asks about a specific time sampling measurement method. Partial interval recording involves breaking the observation time into intervals and marking the behavior as occurring if it happens at any point within that interval, even if it's just for a moment. This method tends to overestimate the occurrence of the behavior. Whole interval requires the behavior throughout the entire interval. Momentary time sampling looks only at the end of the interval, and duration measures how long the behavior lasts. Partial means if it happens in any part of the interval. Question 7. A stimulus that signals that reinforcement is available for a specific behavior is called a S delta, SD. B. Conditioned punisher. C. Discriminative stimulus, SD. D. Motivating operation, MO. Answer: C. Discriminative stimulus, SD. This question defines a discriminative stimulus, SD. An SD is an environmental cue or signal that tells you that if you perform a specific behavior now, you are likely to get reinforced. It sets the occasion for a response to be reinforced. Think of a green light, SD, signaling that driving forward will get you across the intersection, reinforcement. And S delta signals that reinforcement is not available. Conditioned punishers decrease behavior and MOs change motivation. An SD tells you the payoff is here, do the behavior now. Question 8. What is the primary definition of reinforcement in ABA? A. Providing a preferred item after a behavior. B. A consequence that increases the future frequency of the behavior it follows. C. Providing praise after a behavior. D. A consequence that makes a behavior feel good. Answer: B. A consequence that increases the future frequency of the behavior it follows. This is a core concept in ABA. Reinforcement, whether positive or negative, is defined only by its effect on the behavior in the future. If a consequence follows a behavior, and that behavior happens more often afterward, then reinforcement has occurred. It doesn't matter if it's a preferred item or praise, a C, or if the behavior feels good. D. We don't measure feelings directly. The definition hinges entirely on the observed increase in the behavior's future likelihood. Reinforcement is all about making the behavior happen more often. Question 9. Teaching a complex skill by breaking it down into a sequence of smaller, manageable steps is called A. Shaping. B. Prompting. C. Task analysis. D. Generalization. Answer: C. Task analysis. This question defines a task analysis. A task analysis is the process of taking a complex skill, like washing hands, brushing teeth, making a sandwich, and breaking it down into a specific sequence of smaller individual steps. This breakdown makes it easier to teach the skill. The resulting list of steps is the task analysis. Shaping teaches the single behavior. Prompting is providing help. Generalization is behavior occurring in new situations. Task analysis is the recipe for breaking down a skill. Question 10. When implementing an extinction procedure for a behavior that was previously reinforced with attention, you should A. Provide attention contingent on the behavior. B. Withhold attention contingent on the behavior. C. Provide a tangible item contingent on the behavior. D. Implement a punishment procedure instead. Answer: B. Withhold attention contingent on the behavior. This question asks about applying extinction for a behavior maintained by attention. Extinction means you stop providing the specific reinforcer that was keeping the behavior going. If attention was the reinforcer, then the extinction procedure is to stop providing attention immediately after the behavior occurs. This means ignoring, turning away, or otherwise not giving the behavior any social reaction. Providing attention would continue to reinforce it. A. Providing tangibles, C, might create a new function or be ineffective. Punishment, D, is a different procedure. Extinction for attention means no more attention for that behavior. Question 11. What is the main ethical principle that requires behavior analysts to base their practice on scientific knowledge and evidence-based procedures? A. Integrity. B. Beneficence. C. Responsible conduct/evidence-based practice. D. Professional boundaries. Answer: C. Responsible conduct/evidence-based practice. This question refers to a core ethical responsibility for behavior analysts. Practitioners must rely on scientific knowledge and evidence-based practices when selecting assessments and interventions. This means using methods that have been shown through research to be effective and appropriate for the client's needs. Integrity is about honesty. Beneficence is doing good. Professional boundaries are about relationships. Responsible conduct and the emphasis on evidence ensures that clients receive treatments that are scientifically supported as effective. Question 12. When measuring the time between two consecutive instances of the same behavior example, the time between one hand flap ending and the next hand flap beginning, you are measuring the A. Latency, B. Duration, C. Frequency, D. Interresponse time, IRT. Answer: D. Interresponse time, IRT. This question specifically defines interresponse time, IRT. IRT is the time that passes between the end of one occurrence of a behavior and the beginning of the very next occurrence of that same behavior. It measures the gap between responses. Latency is time from stimulus to response start. Duration is how long a response lasts. Frequency is the count. IRT measures the time between responses. Question 13. A consequence that, when added following a behavior, makes that behavior less likely to happen in the future is called A. Positive reinforcement. B. Negative reinforcement. C. Positive punishment. D. Negative punishment. Answer: C. Positive punishment. This question defines positive punishment. The key is when added following a behavior. Something is presented, hence positive, and makes that behavior less likely to happen in the future, hence punishment. Positive punishment means you deliver or add an unpleasant stimulus right after a behavior, and because of this, the behavior occurs less often later on. A child touches a hot stove, behavior, and experiences pain, stimulus added, and is less likely to touch it again. Adding something bad to decrease behavior is positive punishment. Question 14. Which type of graph is most commonly used in ABA to display changes in behavior over time and evaluate the effectiveness of an intervention? A. Bar graph. B. Scatter plot. C. Line graph. D. Pie chart. Answer: C. Line graph. This question asks about the standard graph used in ABA. Line graphs, specifically time series line graphs, are the most common way to display behavior data because they clearly show how a behavior changes across sessions or over time. This allows behavior analysts to visually track progress, identify trends, and easily compare data during different intervention phases, like baseline V's, intervention, to see if the intervention had an effect. Bar graphs compare different conditions, scatter plots show relationships, and pie charts show parts of a whole. Line graphs are essential for tracking progress over time. Question 15. What is the difference between a primary reinforcer and a conditioned reinforcer? A. Primary reinforcers are learned, conditioned reinforcers are unlearned. B. Primary reinforcers are unlearned, conditioned reinforcers are learned. C. Primary reinforcers increase behavior, conditioned reinforcers decrease behavior. D. Primary reinforcers are delivered immediately, conditioned reinforcers are delayed. Answer: B. Primary reinforcers are unlearned. Conditioned reinforcers are learned. This question differentiates between primary and conditioned, secondary reinforcers, primary. Unconditioned reinforcers, like food, water, are naturally reinforcing because they meet biological needs. Their value is unlearned. Conditioned, secondary reinforcers, like praise, tokens, money, gain their reinforcing value through being paired with primary or other established conditioned reinforcers. Their value is learned. They both increase behavior. C is incorrect. And immediacy is a factor for both, not a defining difference. Is incorrect. The key is learned versus unlearned value. Question 16. In the three-term contingency, what does the B stand for? A. Background. B. Baseline. C. Behavior. D. Barrier. Answer. C. Behavior. This question is another check on understanding the ABC model. The B stands for behavior. This is the observable and measurable action or response that you are interested in. It's what the individual does. The antecedent happens before the behavior, A, and the consequence happens after the behavior, C. Understanding the behavior and its environmental context, and C, is the core of behavior analysis. Question 17. A motivating operation, MO, affects behavior in two main ways. It changes the effectiveness of a reinforcer, and it changes the A. Function of the behavior, B. Topography of the behavior, C. Frequency of behaviors that have been reinforced by that stimulus, D. Schedule of reinforcement. Answer. C. Frequency of behaviors that have been reinforced by that stimulus. This question describes the two main effects of a motivating operation, MO. MOs change the value of a reinforcer, making it more or less desirable. And they also change how often you engage in behaviors that have historically led to that reinforcer. For example, being very thirsty, MO, makes water more reinforcing and makes you more likely to ask for water or look for a drink. Increases frequency of relevant behaviors. They don't change the function or topography, and they influence behavior likelihood, not the schedule itself. Most change motivation and response likelihood. Question 18. When designing an intervention to decrease a challenging behavior, it is generally recommended to also teach and reinforce an appropriate replacement behavior that serves the same function. This approach is characteristic of A. Punishment, B. Extinction, C. Differential reinforcement, D. Shaping. Answer. C. Differential reinforcement. This question describes a key strategy within differential reinforcement. Differential reinforcement involves reinforcing a desired behavior, like a replacement behavior, while simultaneously putting the challenging behavior on extinction, no longer reinforcing it. Teaching a replacement behavior that achieves the same function as the problem behavior is crucial because it gives the individual a better way to get their needs met, making the challenging behavior less necessary. Punishment and extinction decrease behavior, and shaping teaches new behaviors. Differential reinforcement is specifically about reinforcing one behavior over others. Question 19. You are conducting a descriptive assessment of a child's hitting. Which type of data would you collect? A. Asking the parent how often the child hits. B. Systematically manipulating antecedents and consequences to see their effect on hitting. C. Recording what happens immediately before the hitting behavior itself and what happens immediately after in the natural environment. D. Measuring the time between instances of hitting. Answer. C. Recording what happens immediately before the hitting behavior itself and what happens immediately after in the natural environment. This question asks about descriptive assessment methods for an FBA. Descriptive assessment involves observing the behavior in the natural environment and collecting data on the events surrounding it without manipulating anything. Recording the antecedents, what happens before, the behavior itself, and the consequences. What happens after is known as ABC data collection, a primary method of descriptive assessment. Asking parents is indirect assessment. A. Systematically manipulating conditions is functional analysis. B. Measuring time between instances. D. Is a measurement dimension. IRT, used in descriptive data, but not the assessment method itself. Descriptive means observing and recording correlations in the natural environment. Question 20. Which type of prompt involves demonstrating the correct response for the learner? A. Verbal prompt. B. Gestural prompt. C. Model prompt. D. Physical prompt. Answer: C. Model prompt. This question asks about a specific type of prompt. A model prompt involves the therapist or another individual performing the target behavior so the learner can imitate it. If you show someone how to wave goodbye and then expect them to do it, you've provided a model prompt. Verbal prompts use words, gestural prompts use movements, and physical prompts use touch. Modeling is showing the learner what to do. Question 21. A client's behavior intervention plan includes a timeout procedure. Ethically, the plan should also include A. A functional analysis to confirm the behavior's function. B. Data collection on the effectiveness and side effects of timeout. C. Less restrictive interventions considered or attempted before timeout. D. All of the above are ethical considerations when using timeout. Answer: D. All of the above are ethical considerations when using timeout. This question highlights the ethical responsibilities when implementing punishment procedures like timeout, which are considered more restrictive. Ethically, you should base the plan on an assessment, ideally an FA where feasible. A. Collect ongoing data to ensure the timeout is effective and not causing harm. B. And document that less intrusive, function-based interventions were considered or attempted first. C. All these steps are crucial for the ethical and responsible use of restrictive procedures. Question 22. When a learned behavior occurs in the presence of stimuli that are similar to the original training stimulus, even though the behavior was not explicitly taught in the presence of those similar stimuli, this is called A. Stimulus discrimination. B. Response generalization. C. Stimulus generalization. D. Behavioral contrast. Answer: C. Stimulus generalization. This question defines stimulus generalization. Stimulus generalization is when a behavior that was learned and reinforced in the presence of a specific stimulus, the SD, starts occurring in the presence of different stimuli that share some characteristics with the original SD. The stimulus changes, but the behavior stays the same. Teaching a child to say dog for one dog picture, and they then say dog for other dog pictures or real dogs, is stimulus generalization. Stimulus discrimination is responding differently to different stimuli. Response generalization is doing different behaviors to the same stimulus. Question 23. A practitioner is working on increasing a child's manding, requesting for toys. The child has just finished a long play session and seems uninterested in toys. The practitioner presents a toy and says, "What do you want?" The child doesn't respond. The effectiveness of the toy as a reinforcer is likely low due to A. Deprivation. B. Satiation. C. Prompt dependency. D. Extinction burst. Answer: B. Satiation. This scenario illustrates satiation, which is when a reinforcer loses its effectiveness because the individual has had too much access to it recently. The clue is has just finished a long play session and seems uninterested in toys. Having just played extensively with toys means the child is likely satiated on toys as reinforcers. This state reduces the value of toys and decreases the motivation to demand for them, even with an appropriate prompt. Deprivation, not having enough, makes reinforcers more effective. Prompt dependency and extinction burst are different concepts. Satiation makes the reward less valuable. Question 24. Which type of consequence involves the removal of a stimulus immediately following a behavior, which results in an increase in the future frequency of that behavior? A. Positive reinforcement. B. Negative reinforcement. C. Positive punishment. D. Negative punishment. Answer: B. Negative reinforcement. This question defines negative reinforcement. The key clues are removal of a stimulus, something is taken away, hence negative, and results in an increase in the future frequency of that behavior, hence reinforcement. Negative reinforcement means taking away something unpleasant or aversive right after a behavior occurs, and because this removal is reinforcing, the behavior happens more often in the future. Taking aspirin to remove a headache, behavior increases. Putting on a seatbelt to stop the beeping sound, behavior increases. Taking away something bad to make the behavior happen more is negative reinforcement. Question 25. When creating a behavior intervention plan, what is meant by ensuring it is socially significant? A. The plan should be easy for staff to implement. B. The target behaviors and goals are important and meaningful to the client and society. C. The plan should use only socially mediated consequences. D. The plan should focus only on increasing social skills. Answer: B. The target behaviors and goals are important and meaningful to the client and society. This question asks about social significance, a foundational principle in ABA. Behavior analysis aims to produce changes in behavior that are not just statistically significant, but socially significant. This means targeting behaviors that are important to the client's life, help them access reinforcement, participate in their community, improve their independence, and are valued by society. It's about making a real, meaningful difference in the person's life, not just changing behavior for the sake of changing it or focusing only on social skills. D. Or ease of implementation. A. Ensure your goals truly matter. Question 26. A graph displays a client's hitting behavior in baseline and intervention phases. The intervention phase shows the behavior immediately and significantly decreasing compared to baseline. This type of immediate and large change visually suggests: A. The intervention is ineffective. B. The intervention likely had a strong effect. C. The behavior is maintained by automatic reinforcement. D. Data collection is unreliable. Answer: B. The intervention likely had a strong effect. This question tests your ability to interpret visual changes on a behavior graph, which is a crucial ABA skill. When a graph shows a clear and immediate change in the level of the behavior between phases, example baseline and intervention, and that change is in the desired direction, decrease for a problem behavior, it provides visual evidence suggesting that the intervention was effective in changing the behavior. A lack of change or an increase would suggest ineffectiveness. While reliable data is needed for conclusions, a clear visual change is the first indicator of an intervention effect. Immediate large change suggests a strong impact. Question 27. What is the primary difference between a fixed ratio, FR, schedule, and a fixed interval, FI, schedule? A. FR is based on responses, FI is based on time. B. FR uses positive reinforcement, FI uses negative reinforcement. C. FR produces a scallop, FI produces a step-like pattern. D. FR is predictable, FI is unpredictable. Answer: A. FR is based on responses, FI is based on time. This question asks about the key difference between two common fixed schedules. The fundamental difference between ratio schedules, FR, VR, and interval schedules, phi, VI, is whether reinforcement is based on the number of responses emitted, ratio, or the passage of time, interval. In a fixed ratio schedule, reinforcement follows a set number of responses. In a fixed interval schedule, reinforcement follows the first response after a fixed amount of time has passed. They are both predictable because they are fixed. It is incorrect. FR produces a step-like pattern. FI produces a scallop. C is incorrect. The difference is responses vs. time. Question 28. You are teaching a child to point to pictures when you name them. You say, point to cat, and show pictures of a cat and a dog. This is an example of teaching. A. Simple discrimination. B. Conditional discrimination. C. Response generalization. D. Stimulus generalization. Answer. B. Conditional discrimination. This question describes teaching conditional discrimination, often seen in matching to sample tasks. Conditional discrimination involves the learner's response to one stimulus being dependent on the presence of a third stimulus, the condition. In this case, the child's response, pointing to a picture, is conditional on the verbal stimulus you provide, point to cat. The verbal instruction tells them which of the comparison stimuli, the cat or dog picture, is correct. Simple discrimination is responding differently to two stimuli based on a direct association, not a third conditional stimulus. Response/stimulus generalization are different concepts. The verbal instruction acting as a condition makes it conditional discrimination. Question 29. A supervisor asks a therapist to implement a procedure that the therapist believes is harmful or unethical. Ethically, the therapist's first action should be to A. Implement the procedure as instructed. B. Refuse to implement the procedure and immediately report the supervisor. C. Discuss their concerns and the ethical implications with the supervisor. D. Seek guidance from other therapists. Answer. C. Discuss their concerns and the ethical implications with the supervisor. This question addresses an ethical dilemma when a supervisee believes a supervisor's instruction is unethical. Ethical codes require supervisees to question instructions they believe are problematic. Their first step should be to attempt to resolve the issue by discussing their concerns directly and respectfully with the supervisor, explaining why they believe the instruction is unethical and exploring alternatives. Implementing a potentially harmful procedure, A, is unethical. Immediately reporting, B, or only discussing with peers, D, are generally not the first required step in resolving ethical issues with a supervisor. Attempt resolution through direct communication first. Question 30. You are working with a client who engages in pica, eating non-food items. A medical evaluation is conducted, which identifies a potential nutritional deficiency. This medical finding functions as in blank for the pica behavior. A. Antecedent. B. Consequence. C. Setting event. D. Discriminative stimulus. Answer. C. Setting event. This question asks about the role of medical factors as setting events. A nutritional deficiency or other internal medical issue can act as a setting event that makes the behavior of pica, eating non-food items, more likely or makes it more sensitive to certain consequences. Example, the nutritional value or taste of the non-food item might serve as automatic reinforcement. A setting event is a broader environmental or internal condition that doesn't immediately precede the behavior, but influences its probability or the effectiveness of consequences. It sets the stage for the behavior to occur, rather than being a direct antecedent, consequence, or SD. Question 31. When teaching a new skill using discrete trial training, DTT, the therapist presents a clear instruction or cue, waits for the learner's response, and then delivers a consequence. This structured format is based on the analysis of A. Respondent conditioning, B. Behavioral contrast, C. The three-term contingency, D. Generalization. Answer. C. The three-term contingency. This question links the structure of discrete trial training, DTT, to a core ABA principle. DTT is a highly structured teaching method based directly on the three-term contingency. Antecedent behavior consequence. The therapist presenting the instruction/cue is the antecedent, SD. The learner's action is the behavior/response. The therapist's delivery of reinforcement or correction is the consequence. DTT breaks skills down and teaches them in this specific ABC format to make the contingencies clear to the learner. Question 32. What is the primary function of a consequence in operant conditioning? A. To elicit an involuntary response. B. To signal when a behavior should occur. C. To influence the future probability of the behavior it follows. D. To increase the intensity of the behavior. Answer: C. To influence the future probability of the behavior it follows. This question asks about the fundamental role of consequences in operant conditioning. Consequences, reinforcement or punishment, are defined by their effect on the behavior that occurred immediately before them. They determine whether that behavior is more likely, reinforcement, or less likely, punishment, to happen in the future. They don't elicit involuntary responses, that's stimuli in responded conditioning, signal when behavior should occur, that's antecedents/SDs, or necessarily change intensity, though that can be a side effect. The core function is changing the future likelihood of the behavior. Question 33. You have been asked to provide behavior services to a client, but you have a pre-existing relationship with the family. Example, you are neighbors or close friends. Ethically, you should: A. Accept the case as you know the family well. B. Accept the case only if you can provide superior services due to your relationship. C. Decline the case and provide a referral to another qualified professional to avoid a potentially problematic dual relationship. D. Accept the case but inform your supervisor about the relationship. Answer: C. Decline the case and provide a referral to another qualified professional to avoid a potentially problematic dual relationship. This question directly addresses the ethical principle of avoiding dual relationships. Having a close pre-existing personal relationship with the client's family before starting professional services creates a dual relationship. This can compromise your objectivity, create conflicts of interest, or potentially harm the professional relationship or the client's welfare. Ethical guidelines strongly recommend avoiding such situations by declining to provide services and referring the family to another qualified professional. Your personal relationship should not interfere with your professional role. Question 34. Which measurement method provides an estimate of the duration or frequency of a behavior by recording whether it occurs at a specific moment in time at the end of each interval? A. Partial interval recording. B. Whole interval recording. C. Momentary time sampling. D. Duration recording. Answer: C. Momentary time sampling. This question describes momentary time sampling. In this time sampling method, you set intervals, but you only check and record whether the behavior is occurring exactly at the moment the interval ends. You don't care if it happened throughout or at other times in the interval. It gives an estimate of the behavior's occurrence and is useful for continuous behaviors or observing multiple individuals simultaneously because you just have to look up at the specific moment. Partial records any occurrence, whole records occurrence throughout, and duration measures how long it lasts. Momentary is checking at a specific point in time. Question 35. When using a differential reinforcement procedure, the success relies heavily on: A. Punishing the problem behavior every time it occurs. B. Making the reinforcement for the desired behavior more effective than the reinforcement for the problem behavior. C. Using a fixed schedule of reinforcement for the desired behavior. D. Ensuring the problem behavior is physically impossible to perform. Answer: B. Making the reinforcement for the desired behavior more effective than the reinforcement for the problem behavior. This question highlights a crucial factor for the success of differential reinforcement. For an individual to choose the desired behavior over the previously reinforced problem behavior, the consequence for the desired behavior must be more appealing or powerful than the consequence they were getting and are now no longer getting, if extinction is used. For the problem behavior, you need to make the payoff for the appropriate behavior better than the payoff the problem behavior used to get, while punishing the problem behavior can be used in conjunction. A. DR primarily relies on the relative power of the reinforcement for the alternative behavior compared to the now unavailable reinforcement for the problem behavior. Fixed schedules, C, aren't inherently required for success. DRI, D, is only one specific type of DR. Making the good behavior pay off better is key.